Welcome everybody. How are you doing today? I hope everybody's doing really well. And today I wanted to speak a little bit about our upcoming day-long intensive for returning students, where I want to speak about both about the decision for freedom and also about the impermanence of our moment by moment experience and how to really remember that, how to navigate the living in a world. There's this saying, in the world but not of the world. The living in a world where we don't reject or judge our moment by moment experience, and yet living in a world where we live in the reality of the impermanence of our moment by moment experience. So when I say impermanence, because some people use the term real, it's real or it's not real. And of course that's very direct, but sometimes misunderstood, because then we can think, well, my experience is not real. If that is taken very directly, sure, for some people that might cause some kind of judgment, right? So I say permanent, impermanent. Permanent in a sense of presence being the only permanence, throughout of all experience. In the beginning, in the middle, at the end, like we can see all experience arises in presence. When we are really at rest here, when we are really quiet, we know that, that there's nothing, right? We don't experience the world. We don't experience objects. We don't experience the body. The moment, the movement, we move away from the deep rest. Now the mind arises, and with the mind, the world, and our day by day, moment by moment experience. And so, even though we are so used to that, we can say it's not permanent because it isn't always present. That's the definition of it, right? It isn't always present. There is a certain amount of time that this, what we call the waking state, we are aware of that, right? And then it is not perceived or experienced or here. So every night before going to sleep, there's this moment in which we have to give up everything. You can't keep anything, right? You can't keep your friends, your relatives, your possessions, your body. You can't keep anything, any of your experiences, right? You have to give it all up, and so that the mind can drop out of this waking stage. So often drop into the dream stage, and then eventually merge in the bliss of our true nature in the deep sleep, so that we get rest, right? And then every morning that process repeats itself again, out of the deep sleep, out of that merging, the mind, the sense of I arises again, and through the dream state it comes to the waking state, where we experience waking up in the morning, and the reality of that waking state, which we are so used to. Habitually, we are so used to it. We perceive it as solid. We perceive it as real. As in reality, it is a projection of our mind, as is the dream state that we experience at night. And so, the only reality permanently present is our true nature that we so naturally experience every night in a deep sleep. And of course, many of you already know that reality as we are sitting here, and moment by moment by moment. So, first we really need to realize that impermanence of that experience. You know, and when I say realize, it's not just a thought, it's not just an idea, and it's not a rejection. It's just realization that this is not always present. That if you even use your logic, you can see, you know, this is not always here. In deep meditation, is that waking state here? You know, when you sit in deep meditation, do you experience the body or the waking state or the world or any other objects for that matter? Same at night in that deep, deep, deep sleep, which, you know, really meditation is like that deep sleep at night, just while awake. You know, do we experience the world? Where is the world? Where is the waking state? Where is the body? Right? But you see, out of habit, because we wake back up into this waking state, we believe, oh yeah, this is solid, this is permanent, this is reality, right? So the question is, how can we know both? How can we know moment by moment by moment and remember that? Experientially know the impermanence of this. Know that this is just an experience that arises here. It's not wrong, right? It's not supposed to be here, but it's just an experience that arises in presence. And, you know, at the same time, not to live in the rejection. You know, so often that's a mistake or misunderstanding that people have. Reject the world. You know, still live in the joy and appreciation of it, and yet also moment by moment by moment to know that true reality of our experience, which is present. So we will be speaking about this and about many other things, including decision for freedom, in our upcoming day-long intensive. And right now, as we are sitting here, I want to invite you for another moment of beautiful, experientially touching into presence, touching into the permanent reality that is always here. The permanent reality from which everything arises, including the dream state and this waking state as well. So I'm looking forward to our time together, and for everybody else, if you are watching these videos, if you like them, please subscribe, please share them, please like them, so that more people can benefit from that.